Welcome to another virtual bird talk presented by Chirp Nature Centers. My name is Tori, and I'm really excited that you could join us today. Chirp has been hosting events for about 3 years. We've been holding educational wild bird related events, including in-person bird walks, in-person bird talks, virtual bird walks, and virtual bird talks, which you're joining right now. And all of these events in our 2021 season run from May through October. So we really look forward to seeing you at some of our upcoming events as well. And don't forget, all of our virtual events can be enjoyed anytime from anywhere on our YouTube channel, Chirp Nature Centers. So before we begin today, I just want to go through a few birdhouse rules. Please continue to engage, post in the chat, comment on this video, whether you're watching it live or whether you're enjoying it later. We love to hear from you. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to introduce you to our specialist for today. Our Big Bear Bald Eagle specialist is Sandy Steers, and she received a BA in biology, but it was when she was a Galapagos Island guide that her interest in birds really took flight. She's also a bird watcher of 25 years, and she's been watching our local eagles for almost 20 years. She started watching them in 2012 through a scope as the first bald eagle chick in Big Bear Valley's history grew up near the current nest. She also is the executive director of the environment educational nonprofit Friends of Big Bear Valley, and she's been helping run that organization for 19 years. And through this organization, she presented the idea of the Eagle Cam, which was installed in 2015 and now has a 24-hour live stream that you can enjoy on YouTube. Well, I'm so excited to get to speak with you today, Sandy, about the history of our bald eagles in Big Bear Lake, as well as this current 2021 nesting season and everything that unfolded. So go ahead and turn on your camera and let's get this party started. There you are. Hi.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing
Good morning,
today?
everybody.
Yes, we have so many people joining us today. I'm super excited to get this started. So can you just let me know, and all of our audience know, why did you start following the eagles?
First, it was fascinating that they had a chick it's only half a mile from my house. So it was exciting to be able to take a scope and watch that chick. And the year that she was growing up in the nest, I pretty much spent most of every day out there, hours at a time, not getting anything else done because I was watching her through the scope. It was fascinating to see her jumping up and down.
Yeah, wow, that's so cool. And then was there an aha moment for you when you just realized the importance of nature and birds in your life?
I started seeing how much personality these bald eagles had, that they weren't just birds out there. Each one was completely different than the other one. They had different behaviors, different ways of communicating, and it made me start looking at nature completely different, that they are all individuals.
Yeah, no, that's really true. And then in one phrase, because we're going to kind of highlight the 2021 season in your presentation. So in one phrase, what's kind of the feeling and the emotions and kind of a summary of what this 2021 nesting season was for you?
It was both heartbreaking and inspirational at the same time.
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into your presentation.
Okay. So this is the Big Bear Valley Big Bear Bald Eagle Nest Cam. This is the only pair that stays year-round at this site and nests here. It stays year-round in the valley. Wow. And originally, bald eagles were coming from mostly northern places, some from Catalina later on, but originally from Idaho and Montana and even Canada, and wintering. And we had an average of 25 plus wintering bald eagles here from December to March. But then there were never any from about April until November when they started showing up again. And that there's a lot less coming now, and then one stayed in 2009, stayed all through the summer.
Oh, wow.
And found a mate here. And that one, at least we think it's the one. Originally when it came, it had a tag on its wing that we knew it was from Catalina. We think it was that same one, and found a mate. and they got named by the Forest Service Ricky and Lucy because they were a pair, and they were always building their nest. And then the first year in 2011 to 12 season, in February of 2012, they had a chick that was discovered while the third graders were on their third grade tour with the Forest Service. And it was actually a third grader who said, "I think there's a chick in the nest," when she was looking through the scope, and shocked the biologists, who had to agree there was a chick in the nest. And that was, they named that chick Jack, the Forest Service did. But the by the end of the season, Jack was bigger than both of her parents. So it meant it had to be a female. Female bald eagles are about a third of their size bigger than the male. So since she was bigger than both parents, it's definitely a female, and the name changed to Jackie.
So is it common for female eagles to be larger than males?
Yes, it's always the case. Yes.
By about a third, right?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
A lot bigger. Yes. And so you can tell who's the boss in the family.
Yeah, I like that. We actually have a question that's already been posted in the chat. Do you mind if I ask?
No, please.
It's from Cusco, and he asks, what is the name of the first eaglet that you watched?
That was the one that's called Jack or Jackie. That was the eaglet that I was watching. I watched her grow up in that. You can see it's kind of a snag. It's near the nest that is there now. But this one, by the time she bounced up and down, as big as she was, bounced up and down practicing flying, and then a big windstorm, that nest doesn't exist anymore. And wow. They built another one in a nest in a tree about 50 feet away. It's not very far away. And that's the nest that they used since. And in those next years, that Ricky and Lucy, in 2014-15, they had another chick, and that's Ricky with the chick there. You can see it's an adorable picture. And the chick did fledge. We watched it, but we were watching through binoculars, through the scope, and not being able to see much of what happened. And that's when the Forest Service biologists at that time and myself started talking about it. It would be nice to be able to see better into this nest. And so we started doing campaigning to put up the bald eagle nest. And we put it up in October of 2015 without realizing that Ricky and Lucy had decided to move houses. They built a nest in another tree about a quarter mile away. And that's, you can see in the bottom pictures. And that year they raised Moonlight and Sky, both to fledging. And then after that year, we don't know what happened with Ricky and Lucy. They seem to have left the area.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, and feel free to ask questions anytime.
Okay, well, we have a lot coming in, so continue to post, everyone. But someone asked, why is it called a snag?
Oh, it's called it's called a snag because it doesn't have any leaves or anything. It's kind of broken off at the top. And so when it's broken off like that and doesn't grow from the top anymore, it's called a snag.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And this is the current nest tree, like I said, close to the other one, but this is the year when we put up the nest camera. The nest is actually 145 feet in the air, 145 feet up that tree. So it's a really big deal to get somebody to climb up there. They have to be a biological climber, meaning they don't harm the tree. They have to have a permit from the state and from the federal government because eagles are protected in both places. And so to have anything to do with the eagle nest, they have to have 2 permits and know how to do this. So it's a really big deal to get. There's not very many people in the country we can hire to go up the tree.
Wow. And how long did it take to install the whole camera?
It took about 3 days. Well, with lots of planning ahead of time. It took us 2 years to raise the money. It cost a lot of money to do all this. There's a whole system tied into it. It's solar powered. It has to run so that it can send the live stream to the internet, and that has satellites attached to it and sending signals different places and antennas. And so we are it's a whole big system. People don't realize, they think it's just a camera in the tree, but it's not. It's a whole system with lots of, hundreds of feet of cable and various other things.
Do you ever have tech issues? I feel like I can relate to that.
We do have tech issues sometimes, yeah. This past year it was down for a month or so because the cables had pulled loose and there were lots of things that happened, yeah.
So it takes a person climbs up there because someone asked how it gets up there.
A person climbs up that tree and they carry everything in a backpack that they need to put up there, and it's all connected with the system that's driving it. And because it's in the forest, there's not any electricity, so it's solar powered.
Wow.
Yes.
Quite a process.
It is. And then that year, though, we put it up, as I said, we didn't realize that Ricky and Lucy had moved their nest to another tree. So we had an empty nest, so to speak, for that whole season. But the next fall, an eagle showed up that we call Jackie, and we believe it's Jackie because every summer there was one eagle in the valley besides Ricky and Lucy, and that was always a subadult that was the right age to be Jackie, that first chick. And so then she moved into this nest, which was not where her nest, it was right next door. But and you can see from this picture kind of how small the nest is compared to, if you've seen the live stream now, how big it is. But this is when they were first building, and Mr. B, we named him, came in to mate with Jackie, and there was lots of snuggling, but no eggs that year. We suspect that Jackie was too young. She was still a subadult with those dark markings.
Gotcha. Let's see, I'm going to check the chat. Oh, do we believe that Ricky and or Lucy came from Catalina?
We think that Ricky might have come from Catalina, but we're not positive. By the time he started using the nest, his tag that identified him as having been from there had fallen off. So we think it's the same one because there was only one staying in the valley, but we can't be sure. Yeah.
And then let's see. I think some of these questions are going to get answered as the presentation continues. So I'm going to hold off. You go ahead and keep going.
Okay. So then the next season, Jackie and Mr. B had 2 eggs and hatched 2 chicks that were named by the 3rd graders in Big Bear. The 3 classes get together and get to vote, and they named them Stormy and BBB for Big Bear Baby.
Cute.
And you can see they're very adorable. And unfortunately, BBB didn't make it through one of the winter storms. When they don't have their winter feathers and they get wet, they can basically get hypothermia and they don't make it. But Stormy did make it. You can see him there at the bottom, and he fledged, and this is in a tree. The bottom right is a tree far away from the nest, and he's there with Jackie following him. And he actually fell out of the nest before he was ready to fledge, but he landed on a limb below the nest, and his parents fed him for another 9 days before he made it back up into the nest, figured out how to fly to get back up there. Anyway, he had a big dramatic story beginning to his life.
Yeah, that sounds very traumatic.
Yes. And then in the late summer of 2018, a quote intruder came, and we start calling him Shadow. But you can see Shadow, he's a subadult or barely old enough with the dark markings. And he stood his ground and would not leave when Mr. B and Stormy and Jackie all tried to make him leave the nest. He would not leave. And so finally, Jackie decided he was pretty strong. So she decided to keep him, and Mr. B left. And so, yes, eagles mate for life mostly, except Jackie decided not to.
So that's pretty rare.
It is, yes. So now she has Shadow. And that year we also, you can see from the photo, installed a new camera with instead of the wide angle that made everything look kind of far away, we're right there with them. And so again, we had to climb the tree and do all of that fun stuff to get the new camera up there.
And how many eagles currently winter in Big Bear?
It's for the last eagle counts, there was around, it's between 6 and 9, I think. So it's a lot less than it used to be, most likely from all the development, and there's not enough areas around the lake for them to not be bothered. They don't really like to be bothered, and um, but there's not as many as there used to be.
Interesting.
But Jackie and Shadow started hanging out together and kind of snuggling in this tree and bringing sticks. The way that eagles bond every year is with this beak. We call it kissy beaky, and bringing sticks to the nest. They both continue to bring sticks, and this is Jackie on her tippy talons with this. Her stick is so big, and they help each other and they work together and they continue bringing sticks, and that's the way they do that. And they start usually in about October, bringing sticks and bonding and eventually mating. And they chase away predators. And just for people to see, eagle wingspan, females is 7-foot wingspan and male is about 6.5 feet. So they are really big birds.
Yeah.
And by comparison, you can see their wings are even bigger than the nest. The nest has been measured, and it's right now, it's a little over 5.5 feet across. And so you can see how big they are. But through all of the wintering and everything, they keep coming to the nest and bonding until in January, Jackie laid an egg. You can see when she gets all puffed up like that, she's starting her process, and then there's an egg. And this had to be the first egg that Shadow ever saw, because he was still just barely mature, and eagles don't let any other eagles into their nesting area. So it had to be the first egg he saw. So he was quite curious about it.
Yeah, so there's a question about that. Do the
Yes.
eagles overwintering there stay away from the nest area? Do they
Yes.
sense like the nest is off limits?
The nest is off limits, and Jackie and Shadow will protect it. If anybody gets near, they will come and keep anybody else away from the nest. And so then we had a second egg, and that somehow a pine cone fell off the tree into the nest, and Shadow, being a new dad, didn't realize that that wasn't another egg. And so he turned it and everything, just like he did the other two eggs. He was very careful with it until a few weeks later, Jackie got tired of sitting on that pokey pine cone and threw it out of the nest.
She knows what she wants.
Yes. But you can see they do this wing spread. You can see the raven at the top, and they will spread their wings out across the whole nest to keep intruders away. Shadow finally figured out about sitting on the eggs and everything, and he liked doing it so much that when Jackie would come back, he would complain and say, "No, I'm not getting up. It's still my turn." And
What a committed father.
He is. He really is. And but she would bite him on the beak and make him get up. And when it was her turn, and she sat through snow and all kinds of things, but then Shadow would get back at her a few ways by putting sticks on her, walking across her. So he just very subtly makes sure she knows she can't boss him around. And this is Jackie in the middle of the night under lots of snow. They have an down insulation under their waterproof feathers that are on the top that you see, but they have down insulation. So all of them are like they're waterproof, and it's like they have a down coat on. So they really can sit through all of this and they're fine, in spite of how cold it looks to us. And then, like a good husband, Shadow started bringing fish to the nest to feed Jackie even before the eggs were hatched. And then he got to see his chicks, and they had 2 chicks. This time the third grader, we had a contest, and people entered names, and then the third graders got to pick the winners, and they picked the names Simba and Cookie. And so that's the little chicks there. And they are unusually ugly adorable when you see these chicks as they grow up.
That's a good way to describe them. Yeah.
And Shadow got to learn how to feed chicks. He didn't know that, and so when they were first hatched, he would stand in the nest while Jackie was feeding him, and he would even look around at her, and make sure he could see how big a piece she was getting on and what she was doing with it. And it was fascinating to watch him learn how to feed the chicks, and then he got it down.
That's good.
So that was Simba and Cookie. And there was another big storm that we had late in the season, and sadly, Cookie was too big for them both to fit under the mother, and he got wet again and didn't make it through that storm.
So as you can see, like the eagles are in very intense weather. And you'd mentioned that the full grown adults have waterproof feathers, but I'm assuming the babies don't.
The babies don't until they're like between 6 and 7 weeks old is
Oh,
when they grow their waterproof feathers. So if they get wet before that, they don't have the protection. And so they have the down underneath, but it can get wet, and then that makes it worse when they're not waterproof yet. So that's why the adults sit on them basically and keep them protected until they're older. And then when they do have their waterproof feathers, she will start sleeping out on the limb and doing things like that a little, giving them a little more space.
gotcha.
But Simba did make it, and uh, he grew up and he was quite curious. He was even doing things like biting the camera. He was curious about what this thing was. So we all got to inspect his tonsils basically as he was biting things and looking at everything. And this is after he fledged out. This is actually the tree where Jackie grew up, but
Wow.
it's fairly near the nest. And then we start with a new nesting season after Simba left the area. And once the eaglet fledges, meaning they fly from the nest for the first time, the parents follow them around and make sure they eat. They bring them food wherever they are, and for at least a few weeks until they teach them how to hunt, how to fish, and get food for themselves. And so then usually the chick will leave the area because they're not welcome anymore. As soon as the new nesting season starts, the chick is an intruder. And so
Wow.
they keep them away from the nest, yes. And so we're back to building and adding lots more sticks and bonding as they move into the next season. And I love how they look like they're doing teamwork, putting these sticks in the same place. And sometimes it looks like teamwork, and sometimes it looks like each one of them saying, "No, I know where it goes. No, I know where it goes," and kind of tussling with it.
Oh man. So when do eagles stop building their nests?
Never.
Oh, all right.
They keep building. Even when there's chicks, they bring sticks. We've had seen chicks have sticks put on top of them. Even yes, they're always building.
And why is that?
That's one of their bonding rituals. It's how they claim their territory, and they claim it's theirs, and they bond together by saying, "Okay, I'm helping with this nest. This is mine."
Wow, that's very cool.
And again, we're sitting through snow, and they start. Jackie starts sitting once the nest gets a little bit together. She starts sitting kind of to practice and see how the nest bowl is fitting and moving sticks around. And then we laid eggs again. This is 2020 in January, and um, Jackie laying her eggs, and then a second egg. And then they brought fluff after the eggs are laid is when they bring fluff and start putting that in the middle of the nest so it's all soft for the chicks. And having a discussion about the eggs, it looks like here. And protecting them and rolling them even during the night. Jackie is almost always the one that sleeps on the nest and stays with the eggs all night. She doesn't trust the man to do it. And here you can see the eggs.
Wow.
And again, ravens are always around the area, so they're always protecting.
Hmm.
And we had a really big storm that they were protecting the eggs through that year.
Wow. And
But
Kathy had asked, is the area around the nest off limits to people to protect them?
during the nesting season, it is, yes. And and most people don't really know where the nest is. We don't tell anybody exactly where it is. I mean, there's a, a couple mile square area that it's in, but that's all anybody knows. And and it's not easy to find because it's way up in the tree. So,
Makes sense.
but yeah, it is protected, and the Forest Service closes that area to keep everybody out during the nesting season. Then sadly, those eggs in 2020 did not hatch. They sat on them. Usually, eggs hatch between 35 and 38 days from when they're laid. They sat on these for 68 days before they start giving up
Wow.
and leaving the eggs alone. And that's when ravens came in and got the eggs. And sadly, Shadow came back and saw what had happened, and he just looked confused. And they had sort of what I would call a ceremony where Jackie came and carried one of the eggs away, and Shadow came and buried the other one under the soft material, and they were looking kind of confused for a couple weeks, not sure what to do with themselves since they didn't hatch. But eagles are resilient. They started back in with Shadow doing his mischief, biting Jackie's tail like he likes to do.
What's funny, and I this year specifically, as we get into the 2021 season, we're going to talk about, I started following them more actively, as I'm sure a lot of our viewers have as well.
Yes.
And you do recognize that relationship. Like you see the joking and kind of the fighting,
Yes.
and it's amazing to
It is.
watch.
It is amazing. Yes. and and so they started bringing sticks again, and even through the winter they were bringing sticks. And then in practice sitting on the nest. This we aren't able to now since we put up the new camera, but before we were able to um, see. Well, we raised the camera. We didn't. This is the new camera, but uh, we used to be able to see where they roost by zooming around, and so it's fairly near to the nest, and you can see them that they spend the night together as well. And they added to the nest all summer sticks, not every day, but during the summer they take a few days off, but they bring sticks all year, building and building, and also doing their little kissy kissies and bonding. Sometimes having what might be an argument that seems to confuse Shadow. And they're not always at the nest. This is, again, that snag tree that they were hanging out at one day. We could hear them over there talking back and forth, so we panned the camera around to find them.
Wow.
And then in November, they started sitting in the nest bowl, kind of practicing. And Shadow's curious to see if Jackie's sitting on anything yet. He's, whoops, always keeping an eye out. But they keep building, keep bringing more sticks.
Wow. And while we're looking at their kissy beaky photos,
Yes,
Cynthia asked, can you talk more about their beaks? They seem to show affection and annoyance with their beaks.
they do show both. And yes, their beaks are, because that's how they catch food, that's how they move all the sticks. Their beaks are really like their hands almost. They do use their feet sometimes if they in moving the sticks and bringing them in, but the beaks is how they maneuver everything. So yes, their beaks are very active. And Shadow, as you can see here, is biting Jackie's wing with it just because he likes to. And again, Jackie's sitting on the nest, getting ready, and Shadow's standing watch. And then she starts laying eggs. This was in January of this year, and Shadow is curious again to see that there's an egg there.
And Terry asked, why do they roll the eggs?
They roll the eggs because the egg in there is soft inside, and they need to keep it from getting stuck on any of the sides or stuck on the membrane. So they roll the eggs to keep it fresh and moving inside, basically.
And they just naturally know to do this?
They do, yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
And again, they started bringing soft material, but those January eggs only lasted a couple days. And we think there might have been something wrong with them because they didn't really sit on them much at all. Within 2 days, I think Ravens got the first egg, and then Jackie actually laid two more, but the third one was broken before it came out of her.
Oh, man.
So we think something was not right with the eggs or not right with Jackie, but those eggs didn't make it. They were all eaten.
And Frank asked, he said, ravens will raid the nests, but do eagles raid the nest of ravens? It's like payback.
Not that, no, I don't believe they do, because the bald eagles actually feed on the water. And so their food, I mean, they will get, if there's something, left out in the open, they will get it, or roadkill or something like that, they will snatch it up. But in general, they don't hunt on land. They hunt on the water for fish and ducks, waterfowl.
And is Jackie a good hunter? Because one of our viewers is mostly sees Shadow bringing her food. And then does she ever bring Shadow food?
She does not ever bring Shadow food. All food is Jackie's, and that's the rule. And I don't know if they do in general, but males generally bring the female the food. That's part of the bonding again. But Jackie will bring food to the chicks, and Jackie does bring food to the nest. She's a very good hunter, but she doesn't give Shadow any food. Shadow gives Jackie food, and if he doesn't give Jackie food, she insists and follows him to the nest to remind him that that food is hers.
Wow.
Yes. And so here is when Jackie, in February, they stayed with the nest and kept going, even though those eggs didn't hatch. And in February, Jackie's starting to lay another egg, and you can see Shadow got kind of nervous about this whole thing. So he moved out to the limb and watched from there as she laid her egg. And then a second egg. And this time they sat on the eggs, through the snow, through everything again. Wow. And you can see the eggs, and they were very carefully rolling them, taking good care of them. And here's Shadow bringing Jackie food, and Jackie, you can see her beak open. She is announcing to the world that this food is hers. Thank you very much. And if you've ever, anybody, you can be in the other room and hear Jackie, when food's being delivered to the nest. She's very vocal about it, claiming it.
Yes. There's also videos on YouTube that people put up of her screaming.
Yes.
Crying.
Yes.
Food cry. I don't know. It's great. It's very loud.
It is very loud, louder than she does anything else. But, and even while she's sitting on the eggs, they continue to do their kissy beaky.
We had a question. When Jackie laid the 3 eggs last year, she had a hard time with the third one because it seems like it cracked immediately.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that?
We don't know. We can't ever know what really happened. I mean, they're 145 feet up in a tree. We don't know what happened. We don't catch them and try to test if they have a fever or anything like that. So we just have to watch and see, well, it didn't work this time, and we move on. I mean, we can do all kinds of speculation, but I don't really see the point of a lot of that because we can't know what happened. Yeah. And the eggs were eaten by ravens, so we don't have the eggs to go and get them and test them and see if there was something wrong. We just have to trust. At this point, after they sat on the eggs, one of them actually started to hatch, but wasn't able to hatch. We actually heard the chick peeping the night before, but then by the next day it had stopped moving and stopped peeping. We don't know what happened. It is possible that because we had a very dry season, that the membrane inside the egg was too dry once the pip had opened up the egg to air, and the chick just couldn't get through it. We don't know for sure.
Hmm.
But
Can you speak a little bit about the, is it the egg tooth that's on the beak of the baby?
yes, an egg tooth, and it's right at the top of the beak, and it allows them to poke a hole in the membrane basically, and then create the pip in the eggshell so that they can start getting out. And they have to, after they do that, they have to turn around, and they have to, there's a lot of, the whole process of hatching is a complex one, and the chick has to figure it out and do it all itself. The adults do not help. But there was one egg left after that one didn't quite hatch, and but that one, they kept sitting on it, but it also did not hatch. And finally, they stopped sitting on it. Jackie stopped before Shadow did. Shadow wouldn't give up, and he had never sat on the nest all night until one night when Jackie had given up, and he wouldn't. He stayed all night very nervously, um, and with him, and Jackie, I could hear. I watched the whole night, and Jackie was calling every couple of hours. She'd call and check on him, and he'd answer her. And so it was funny that even though she had given up on the egg, she hadn't given up on Shadow. So she was keeping an eye on him on his first night on the nest.
So you'd mentioned, I think when we were last talking, about the longest period of time that Jackie had spent on the nest. How long was that?
It was 27 hours. This was when she was with Mr. B, and there was a snowstorm. She sat from, early in the day through the evening, through the night, and most of the next day. And that time when Mr. B came in, and close to evening, to take his turn on the eggs, Jackie didn't come back. And I think she'd had quite enough on the nest, so she let him spend the night. And that was the first time he'd gotten to spend the night. So it has to be very special circumstances for her to let anyone else on the eggs at night.
We also had a question about our fur little friend you can see on the camera. So this is Fiona, correct?
This is Fiona, yes.
When did
And
Fiona make
there's actually
star?
two of them.
Oh,
The other
two.
one's called Freddie. But yeah, after they left the eggs, Fiona came in and was sure she'd found the, jackpot breakfast for herself here, but she couldn't move that egg no matter how hard she tried. It was way too big for her. But they come in even when the eagles are there. When Jackie's sitting on the nest, we've gotten videos and things of Fiona popping over the edge. And one time she did a hop jump off of Jackie's back to the other side of the nest.
Nice.
And again, they're back and continuing to add sticks and do what they do and continuing forward. They just keep going no matter what happens.
Wow.
And so again, they're back. These were just a couple days ago. They're back building the nest. And just so you can see how adding to the nest has been going since 2016, you can see in the upper left, you can see on the right that Y in the tree, the limbs separating there. And as you go through each year, the nest gets closer and closer to the top of that Y until now. In 2021, you can't even see the Y. It's in 2020 even. It's like down, and the nest is now over 5 feet thick, just from the sticks that they have added. So it's a really big deal, this nest building.
So someone asked a question prior about the solar panel. Does someone climb up and clean it?
Well, the solar panels are on the ground, and yeah, we do go and clean it. But yeah, we have to, it's a whole system we have set up. And but we're talking about now, because doing some maintenance on the camera that's in the nest, and getting someone to climb up there and clean the dome, because this past season during one of her night ventures, Jackie pooped on it, and so it's still got stains, and it's kind of muddy looking a little bit, so the pictures are harder to see. But so we're talking about having somebody, we are going to check all the systems and do maintenance in general, and then we will get the dome cleaned at the same time. Yes. But again, this is just this week, and they're there building the nest, bringing sticks, having arguments, doing kissies, and
Yeah, Deb asked, have you ever seen another pair as bonded as Jackie and Shadow? Because other eagle pairs she's seen don't seem that affectionate.
it is fascinating. Um, I haven't watched the other nests as diligently, so I can't say that they aren't as bonded. But these two just seem to have a personality, their own, that they really are bonded with each other, and they really express their individuality, on a daily basis. So it's very funny.
It's like watching a reality TV show.
It is eagles. Quite like watching a reality TV show. Yes. And so they continue. That was those pictures. That's this week. They're putting sticks and hanging out in the nest and getting ready for whatever's next.
Wow. That's amazing. So how are you doing after this whole unusual 2021 season? Like what's been your biggest takeaway?
Just how they keep going, and you can see. I mean, I know a lot of biologists say that eagles don't have emotions, but I would beg to differ with that, because I've watched their reactions to when the eggs don't hatch and when they come back and a raven has opened it up. It's not just instinct you're watching. There's something on there, that you're seeing, but they keep picking up. They just keep going, and it's amazing to watch that they deal with whatever happens today and they move on tomorrow. And I think all of us could learn from that, to just keep going, and whatever happens, yes, feel it and just keep going.
Yeah, no, that's a very good message. I think it's very applicable to this and past years as well. Yeah, so
exactly. Yes.
That's awesome. Well, first off, thank you so much. I would love to jump into some more questions, because there have been a lot of people.
Okay. Yeah, I can stop sharing my screen and we can.
But I love that picture, I must admit. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah, it is a nice picture.
Okay, friends, all you viewers out there, the Q&A questions have opened. So continue to post. We'll try to get to as much as we can. I'm going to scroll up to the top of my screen because they started at the very beginning.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, what is the difference? Oh, I just lost it. What's the difference between a tag on the wing versus a tag on the foot?
A tag on the wing is very temporary. It's, stuck to the feathers a little bit, but when they molt and do things and lose different feathers. And so the tag goes away in 2 or 3 years, I think. On the foot, the band they put on the foot is permanent.
Oh, interesting. Good to know. Michael asks, how old do eagles usually get?
I believe they lived 20 to 25 years in the wild. They've lived longer, sometimes in captivity, but that's the general lifespan.
Good to know. Susan was wondering, are there a chance of any other eggs being laid this season?
There's always a chance for anything, so we just watch and see, but it's very unlikely. They're moving on and acting like they usually do in the summer, which they don't. They only come in the morning or in the evening because it's too warm to hang out in the nest. And yeah,
makes sense. Let's see. Oh, Kathy said, have they had a successful hatch yet?
Yes, that Simba and Cookie was their successful hatch. That's Jackie and Shadow. So yes, they've had chicks.
And then Linda asked, has Simba ever been spotted since he left the nest?
No, we don't know what happened to Simba. It's, somebody, the way it is, they would have to spot an eagle, notice that it had a band, call it into the right agency that report, that keeps track of all the data. And so it's really not highly likely. But
so are they tagged?
Simba and Cookie were tagged, yes.
Gotcha. Oh, I thought this was a creative question. One of our viewers asked, are they going to add a windshield wiper to the camera?
Well, we've had that question and somebody told me, so we're looking into the idea of it. I don't know if it really is something you can do, but we're definitely looking at options.
Very creative.
Yeah.
Very creative idea. Pam asked us, are they called bald eagles because the white feathers on the head make them look bald? And then where are their ears? She also says she thoroughly enjoyed following them through 2020, and she's from the UK. So,
Okay,
Pam
right.
from the UK.
And actually, it's an English word, the word bald.
Oh.
And so it's interesting coming from UK. And it means white. Bald in Old English means white. And so that's why they're called bald eagles. And their ears are in there just under the feathers. They're not external ears.
We have another friend from the UK. This is Lynn. She says, do you name all the chicks and do they return?
We do name all the chicks, and no, they don't return. In general, eagles, when they leave their nesting area and then stay and find their own territory somewhere else.
This was an interesting question. What are the nighttime sleeping places like?
They are they have more than one. One of them's close to the nest, and sometimes you can hear them talking back and forth, at different distances. There's a close, a middle, and a far roost, at least. And it's always somewhere that's a little bit protected, but still has enough open area in the limbs that their 7-foot wingspan can get in there without a problem.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. Cynthia asked, is not having chicks that survived for 2 years unusual?
No, Ricky and Lucy, there were 2 years that they had chicks that didn't survive for various reasons. One times the eggs didn't hatch, and other times the chicks didn't make it. So.
Yeah. And Jen asked, do you think the eagles have been exposed to toxins since their eggs haven't hatched?
We have no way of knowing that, but we'll just have to watch and see. And there's not really anything we could do about it, even if so.
Yeah, that's true. And one thing I do have to point out for those viewers who hasn't seen the Friends of Big Bear Valley website, Sandy writes the blog and kind of narrates the day-to-day happenings of Jackie and Shadow, which I love reading. And I loved what you'd said about just them continuing to move forward. And then also, like, it's a privilege that we get to watch nature. And sometimes, not that nature is cruel, but it's unpredictable, right? And so
it's unpredictable. We don't always know why things are happening or what's happening, and we can't possibly know. I mean, I know people say, well, this happens, is what eagles do, and this is what other eagles do, but we have not studied every eagle nest in the country or that exists. And so we can see kind of in general possibilities, but I like that we can watch the nest and see what happens, see what's possible, and always keep knowing that anything is possible, and maybe we'll get to see something happen for the first time.
Yeah. And speaking of eyes or seeing things, not that I like that segue, but one of our viewers asked, are eagles' eyes the same size as humans? And do they have 2 points of focus to follow their prey?
That is a good question, and I don't think I know the answer. I don't know the size of their eyes. I know that they can see much better than humans. Like if they had a newspaper at the other end of a football field, the eagles could read the headlines, whereas humans couldn't barely see the newspaper.
Wow, that's very impressive.
So they definitely see much better than humans. They do see some at night. They don't see quite as well at night. That's why they don't fly around a lot at night. But they do come in and out of the nest every once in a while in the night. So,
yeah. Wow. Oh, someone asked, what's the difference between Mr. B and Shadow, and why do you think is there a preference there?
A preference from Jackie?
I guess Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie. Well, we didn't see what happened off camera. I just know I watched personally as Mr. B tried to scare Shadow to leave the nest, and Shadow just kept ducking him and not letting, standing his ground. And finally, Mr. B left. And so I don't know if Jackie had chosen Shadow before that, or if she just went with what happened at the nest, but she decided Shadow was okay. And it's funny that watching the personalities, Jackie used to boss Mr. B around a lot, and he was very kind of wimpy. He would just kind of duck and stay out of her way. And Shadow just kind of stands up to her, and you can almost see him whistling, and she can be yelling at him, and he just goes about his business doing what he's doing. And So she doesn't squawk at him as much as she did Mr. B. I think she likes his strength and independence.
That's so funny. See, we had a question from, a Big Bear local. Do they only pick sticks off the ground for the nest, or do they break the ones they want off the trees?
They do a little bit of both, but yeah.
It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, they don't go around trying to break them off the tree, but if there's one loose or something, they'll pick it up off the tree and bring it.
Let's see. We have, I've seen Jackie and Shadow scratching their heads lately. Is this because of molting?
Yes. Yeah.
So even adult eagles will molt throughout the season?
Yes, they will. They change feathers all the time. That's how that's how they lost all the black feathers and as they became adults was the old ones that just fell off. They didn't change colors, but the ones that were black fell out as they grew new feathers, and they continue to do that. Yes.
See, I love this. This is so interesting. We have time for one more question. So I'm trying to find one. If you have any last minute ones, post them in the chat. Let's see.
Yeah. The other thing, let me just say on the molting, you can see sometimes you see little tiny those underneath feathers coming out through their bigger feathers, and that's kind of when they're molting, and sometimes they get them stuck on their beak and they can't shake those little feathers off.
Cute. So I have a question. I think it's pretty important to address this. They said, can we go close to the tree where they nest?
It's recommended that we don't, and because they are skittish. They don't really like humans hanging around their nest tree. And having been up there, the only time we go up there is when, to deal with equipment or anything, is during the off season. And even so, I've had Jackie come and yell at me for being in the area. So I don't recommend it.
Also, isn't it if there's a lot of human intervention that they'll leave the nest?
They
right?
will leave. They will leave the area and go somewhere else, and then we won't get to see them at all. Because if there's a whole lot of activity around, then they decide it's not a very good place to be nesting, and they will move to another site.
So very important to give them their space.
Yes.
That's the moral of the story there. Quick comment. So did it amaze you how many people watched the live cam? Because it was up to 12,000 during the pipping season.
Yes, it was amazing. And we ended up having some technical difficulties because so many people were watching the live cam at the same time going through our website. We had to make some upgrades and changes very quickly.
Well, we're glad that you did.
Yeah. And if people want to watch Jackie and Shadow, they can hang out by the lake and they can see them hunting and find them there. So, and it's actually easier to see them when they're hanging out by the lake anyway than in their nest because they are closer to the ground. They're in shorter trees. You might see them, on the shoreline. In the nest, you can't really see them anyway. I mean, it's really high up. You cannot see them. So,
good point.
Yeah.
And then a final question is, since the nest is growing, will the camera be raised? And how can we contribute to the cost of relocating the camera?
We did raise the camera this past season because the sticks were starting to cover the lens. This year, we probably won't raise it again. I think it's as high as it can go really in the tree, but we will be cleaning the lens and doing maintenance. And thank you for the idea of donations. That's how we keep this going. And on our website, you can make donations. And if you want it to go to nest maintenance, you can put that, or you can put it generally. Everything in the organization, everything we do is about protecting nature and conserving this area and making it so Jackie and Shadow can do what they do.
And can you say your website one more time for everyone out there?
Yes, friendsofbigbearvalley.org. And the Facebook page where I do the posts of the daily stories or weekly stories, depending on how often they're there, is Friends of Big Bear Valley and Big Bear Bald Eagle Nest Cam.
Awesome. I love it. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Sandy. It was such a pleasure getting to talk with you today.
Thank you very much. And I will also say we have Jackie and Shadow t-shirts on our website and calendars and various other things. So
wow, yes.
They have a fan base now.
Well, yes, obviously. I'm part of it. So
Thank you.
So,
Thank
well,
you
thank
very
you
much
so
for
much,
having me.
Nancy. You're so welcome. All right. So now it is your turn to test your ever-growing bird brain. You can go to chirpforbirds.com to take our quick quiz. It's maybe like 3 minutes long, and it's going to enter you in to a drawing where you can win this grand prize. So the grand prize we're going to be giving out during this event is these Knox. They're this new up-and-coming compact binoculars. They're an 8x25. They're waterproof. They're designed with nature in mind, and they're based out of San Francisco. The prototypes were built on a homemade 3D printer, which I thought was really cool. And they come in all non-plastic packaging. There's $95 value, but they're yours for free if you take this quiz and you enter in all of your information to be entered into the drawing. And just for participating in our event today, we want to say thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to mail you an Eagle sticker. Now, the stickers that we create at Chirp are one of a kind, so you can't get them anywhere else, but you can get this for free by taking the quiz. And don't forget, you only have 24 hours to complete it. So I recommend you do it after this. And we hope that you join us again. As mentioned previously, we have events going on from May through October. We have our Bird Walks and Talks series. The first Saturday at 8 a.m. of the month are the in-person walks. The virtual walk is the second Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m. And then we have virtual talks, which we're doing right now, which is the third Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. from May through October. Also, you can view all of our virtual events on YouTube. They're set up in playlists, so they're easy to access. We have a how-to series on how to create better backyard birding. We have our old virtual bird walks, our virtual talks, lots of content for you to consume and enjoy. And then you can check out all of our upcoming events at chirpforbirds.com/events. And until we see you again, let us know how we can help you. We're located in the Big Bear Lake Village. You can also call us or email us at help@chirpforbirds.com and connect with us on our various social medias, because we guarantee you will better your bird brain, because we post about birding information and we keep you updated on all of our upcoming events through our social media. So again, I just want to thank you. My name is Tori. I'm so grateful that you got to join our event today. I'm really looking forward to seeing you either in person or at another virtual event soon. I hope you go ahead and take that quiz and have a wonderful rest of the weekend.